Good morning and welcome back to the morning briefing. Today is Thursday, June 9th, episode 183. And I am Phil Brandt. And with me, as always, is your friend of mine, legal expert Burt Garland, shareholder with Ogletree Deacons. Together, we bring practical, timely, and accurate insight into today's workspace, as it is our goal to keep you informed so you can more effectively lead your organization. We have lots to talk about today. We're going to revisit this Elon Musk inspired back to the office rant or email that has leaked from his office. I do think there's some insight there we should touch on, and I'd like to get some of your opinions, Burt, on that. Maybe there's some legal concerns for us to be aware of that maybe we weren't once needing to comply with. Two, COVID is on the rise, and I hate having to bring COVID back up, but its numbers are on the rise. We're starting to see employers implement mask mandates again and so on. So we need to revisit that topic. And I know there are lots of things related to OSHA inspections happening in healthcare facilities that you should be aware of as well, particularly if you are a healthcare facility operator. We do have a poll question today, and I want to get that out to you. What is your current thought process regarding new mask mandates? And we have 4 choices for you. I'm not going to read all 4 of those choices. They're just a little bit long. But what is your current thought process regarding the new mask mandates in your area? So, Burt, let's start with this Elon Musk inspired email. Did you see his email?
I did. Not only did I see it, Phil, but we chatted about it on the program a little bit in your absence last week. And so, yes, I'm well aware of the email. And to catch our listeners back up to speed, last week, Elon Musk sent out an email to not only his Tesla employees, but his SpaceX employees, basically saying that those who want to continue to work remotely on a long-term basis, better look for a new company to do that for. And
no, to pretend to do that for.
Yeah, to pretend to do that for.
Yeah,
thank you. Good point. So, So yes, Elon Musk has taken a rather aggressive approach, and frankly, an approach that flies in the face of a lot of other tech companies. A lot of people think of Tesla as a car company, but it's much more of a tech company. And this approach is really different than quite a few other tech companies that are looking at doing remote work on a much more permanent long-term basis than apparently Tesla is. And one of the things, Phil, I think it's important to point out is that Tesla, Elon Musk said when he issued this email, to put it in proper context, is that we expect our hourly and our factory workers to show up every day to work. They don't have the possibility to work remotely, and they must physically be there. And those employees should expect nothing less from the higher level employees in the organization, that they are there and that they are at work. And so I do think that there's some proper context around his email.
Yeah, and I do think that, and I know he was trying to suggest, the influence that leaders have or higher ups have, or those associated with the production support that aren't necessarily hourly, the influence they have while they're on the floor, walking the floor, helping assist. I mean, that's the purpose of your existence. I find it a little bit of, it feels and sounds extreme, but I know there are many of our members who subscribe to that, and they never sent workers home. They did not ever implement a work from home policy. And most of them do center around manufacturing type operations, while at the same time, we have, as many or more organizations practicing a work from home policy. I think the key thing there is, where does your organization fit? However, I do think, one thing that made me wonder is, is he looking, maybe they needed to downsize and right size or whatever we want to call it. And it's just a way to maybe skim, a little gravy off the top here, so he knows X percent will quit and go somewhere else, and just a way to get there. I don't believe that's really the underlying message, but I wonder if that isn't some of what he's doing and taking such a strong absolute position on it.
You bring up a very good point there, Phil, because last week also Elon Musk had made an announcement. He's expecting the economy to continue to tank more so than it already has. And one of the things he said last week is he expects to cut Tesla's workforce by up to 10%. In the next few months. So now he did apparently walk back that comment a little bit later in the week last week, but the comment was made, and that does give you a little bit of insight, a little peek behind the curtains there as to what might be going on.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing I thought was interesting is I just saw it was pretty blunt and it was pretty aggressively written email. I felt. You know how things are going to be taken in a public organization like that when it comes out under the name Elon, and it did not feel in any way sensitive to those people who might feel that they actually have the need or earned a legal right to work from home. And I'm curious, after we've been through 2+ years now of COVID, and we've established that it is possible for some people to be, let's just call it equally productive or appropriately productive by working at home. Do we have ADA considerations now that maybe we didn't have prior to COVID with working from home, that it really doesn't allow you to make that carte blanche statement?
Yeah, so let me pick off a different piece of that first. It goes to your comment, Phil, about kind of the in-your-face nature of the email that Musk sent out and lack of sensitivity. And I think that's absolutely by design. I think that he's absolutely advocating and wanting people back in the office. In his example, in his email or in one of his tweets, he said that he specifically referenced HR as needing to be back in the office. And I think that his organization, and frankly, a lot of other organizations, and my law firm is no exception to this, that we have decided that it's a cultural issue, it's a business continuity issue, it's a training issue for younger attorneys and other employees within organizations. And so sure, I think that the in-your-face nature of it is designed to really put a stake in the ground and say, you know, enough is enough. We want you to get back to work. So, or pretend to work. So, as he said. But to get to your other point, it was really interesting because when the EEOC, back during COVID, the height of COVID, the EEOC did put in its guidance when all of the new laws, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was issued, passed by Congress, and then the EEOC interpreted that and issued its guidance. And one of the things they said in there is that if employers make accommodations during COVID, that's not necessarily going to be used against an employer down the road in assessing whether the employer can accommodate or not accommodate work from home or remote working for.
Well, let's hope that comment is remembered and recalled and applied.
Well, so that's my next point there, Phil, is that if I were an employer, would not rely upon that at all, because you can't sort of put the toothpaste back in the tube after this. If you have shown that you as an employer can fairly easily accommodate work from home or remote working, and you have an employee that has a legitimate ADA request to work remotely, you have to consider the reasonableness of that request in the context of, were you able to accommodate this during COVID? And even though the EEOC said that in their guidance that they put out, their frequently asked questions and their Q&As and everything they put out, absolutely, I would not rely on that. And I think that employers that were able to accommodate remote working better be in a position to articulate now why they can no longer accommodate remote work. And it gets back to those things that I just mentioned, talking about the culture of the organization, the business continuity, the training, the efficiency, and employers that want to deny a remote work opportunity to an employee with a disability who requests remote work better be in a position to articulate those things if they want to avoid claims from the EEOC. Now, let me point out one other thing here. Avoiding a claim from the EEOC is one thing. For a plaintiff or the EEOC to win it in court is another thing. And the courts are theoretically a backstop to the EEOC and plaintiffs' attorneys running amok during the administrative process. In other words, what I'm saying is that whatever the EEOC says certainly is not gospel. It's not inscribed in stone. But again, if you don't follow what the EEOC says, you could be in for aggravation, and there's a cost of defense and a cost to prove your organization was correct.
Yeah. And so for reasons other than, is there anything you can imagine for reasons other than disability that someone could have a case that would cause employer lots of problems and money, not that they would necessarily win it, that just says, no, look, I should be entitled to work from home. I've been able to do it and I've been productive. And now you're going to fire me because I won't work in the office, but I'm on paper, your most productive person. I'm over 40. I'm a minority, whatever the status might be. And that's my case in point now.
Yeah. So remember the EEO laws in this country, they don't protect against every decision that an employer makes. It only protects employees if employers are making decisions based on protected categories. And so if you have an employee that just simply wants to work from home and they're in no protected category, you as the employer have no obligation to make an exception there. Now, if those employees or employee who wants to work from home is in a protected category, you need to make sure that you are not running the risk of creating some sort of other discrimination by, an easy example would be granting the requests of male employees to work at home while denying the requests of female employees to work at home. You're going to walk yourself into a different kind of discrimination claim, not for failing to accommodate any sort of disability or anything, or not for just accommodating employees' preferences. Now you've actually walked yourself into a claim of gender discrimination because you're treating the men and the women differently. Or say it another way, you grant the requests of all the white employees to work from home and you deny the requests of all the Black employees to work from home. Once you start disparately, there's that legal word for you. We haven't talked about that in several months. Once you start disparately treating the employees based on those protected categories, then you have opened yourself up to a different sort of claim. With respect to what Tesla is doing, Elon Musk put it out there, all employees are expected to return to work, whether you're male, female, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, this religion, that religion, whatever. He didn't distinguish anything. He's not treating anyone disparately. One other thing I think, Phil, that's important to point out is Elon Musk did state in there in his email, basically, that if anyone wants an accommodation to work remotely, he personally is going to review, personally, the CEO of Tesla is personally going to review whether that accommodation is something that's going to be approved or not. And so he was very savvy in his communication from the standpoint that he recognized that there are going to have to be exceptions, particularly, and I think realistically, only with respect to the ADA or similar state laws. And if anyone wants to take advantage of that exception, old Elon's going to review that himself personally.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? Here comes the executive reporting to Elon as this thing makes its way up the chain, and for one reason or another, they come walking in, and they're going to submit their request, And if that request isn't like an easy, absolutely yes, I think you're going to get an earful. I think they're going to have to be no across the line unless they see that it's really for some medical disability reason that's extremely clear and obvious. Otherwise, you're not getting me to bring that into my boss, period.
Well, not to Elon Musk or as you said, to your boss in any organization. And again, let's not lose sight of the fact what the ADA requires. It requires the employer to engage in an interactive process with the employee to discuss if the employer can reasonably accommodate the request, or if the request constitutes an undue hardship on the employer. Kind of, both flip sides of the same coin there. Employees are not entitled to their preferred request. They're only entitled to an accommodation that the employer can reasonably accommodate without undue hardship. So an employee who wants to work remotely for whatever reason, the employer doesn't have to grant that request per se. What the employer has to do is engage in that interactive, reasonable accommodation discussion with the employee to see if the employer can accommodate remote work. It may be that the employer can offer the employee something else that would allow the employee to perform the essential functions of the position while still coming to work, while still protecting the employee. And so that's a great
reminder. And we've been preaching that from day one and making these decisions fairly consistently across the board. That's a challenge. It's a challenge.
And what the EOC and what the case law say on this is that an employer can't just simply have a bright line rule that says we will not accommodate work from home or remote work. And we have to engage in that interactive discussion. And so an easy example of that would be, you are a manufacturer. You've got a manufacturing facility and an assembly line. It would be very easy to just have a policy out there that says we will not accommodate remote work for any factory floor worker. It seems obvious. I would advise against having that. I would say that we have to have a policy that says we will engage in an interactive discussion with an employee to determine if an accommodation is possible. And then you say, okay, we can't obviously accommodate remote work because your work in and of itself is not remote, it's here. But what other accommodations could we offer that would enable you to perform the essential functions of the position? Is it, a week off of work? Is it some sort of light duty? And have that discussion. What the EOC and what the courts don't want is just those bright line rules. They want you to engage in that interactive process with the employee, an individualized analysis each time an employee makes a request for an accommodation.
Well, I can tell you, let me ask you this. Do you know how many employees Tesla had at the end of 2021?
I do not.
About 99,000.
Wow.
I think it was what reported. And when you think about 99,000, a small percent of those in a request is going to be a large pile. So it'd be very interesting to hear how this develops. I'm sure the media is going to stay all over it. There's a chat question. Would Elon be able to pull off a bold statement like this if he sold a commodity of widgets and not exactly technology solutions? And I would say if he wasn't, the world's richest or one of the richest men and didn't run one of the most recognizable companies and brands in the world, it wouldn't be news, because I know manufacturers that have taken that same position, and we're not talking about them today.
Well, and it's interesting, Phil. I think Elon flat out recognized that, as the listener kind of intimated in the comment there. When Elon put out his statement, he said that he recognized the fact that what this mandate to return to the office is it flies in the face, like I said, of what a lot of other tech companies are doing. But he flat out said, when was the last time any of those companies put out exciting, awesome products?
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, see, now I was thinking he was referring to the other auto manufacturers.
No, I think it was tech companies, and I think it was everyone. When was the last time any organization put out an awesome or an exciting product? And
right.
Who knows exactly what he was thinking, but that's how I took it.
How big you think that ego is, man. Anyway, all right. Well, good for Elon. I think the key thing, and you said it, and what, and people are listening to this, is from a legal perspective, we're giving you some good insight there. I like also what you said, Bert. It's a conversation necessary to have at the executive table to determine your culture and the processes you need to sustain your business. And it isn't something that you should just take a blind statement and position on, but recognize your culture, recognize what's necessary to support your customers, recognize where your business is trying to get to, and also what legal implications can be impacted by the decisions you're making. That's really the best guidance I can give someone. There is not one shoe fits all for all organizations here.
Yeah, Phil, I want to mention one comment that's in the chat here right now. And one of the listeners said on the poll, I think another option could be that I don't think many employees will tolerate a mask mandate any longer. People are exhausted and seem to be willing to take these risks these days. And there is definitely, I mean, we've been talking about it for over 2 years now. That there is serious mask fatigue out there.
Oh, and 100%. I think Michelle in our chat is 100% right.
I agree. And it was really interesting. I don't know if you saw this last week, but on the heels of COVID, I think the latest that people have to watch out for is monkeypox. We all heard of chicken pox when we were little. I had never heard of monkeypox until recently, but a similar type illness with lesions all over the skin. And apparently there's a small segment of the population who's really, truly at risk for catching monkeypox. But the CDC last week had issued some guidance saying that they were considering mask mandates to ward off monkeypox.
Oh no!
Yeah, and so, but very quickly, doctors, scientists pointed out that this is not an airborne issue. That it comes from contact. And
well, let's do bodysuits.
Yeah, so it comes from contact, and so the CDC quickly backed off of their thought of reinstituting mask mandates to combat monkeypox.
Yeah, and I agree. I do think there is mask fatigue, but we should still be aware of what's going on in our local community. It's very much a localized issue now more than ever before. Where we were talking about statewide mandates and so forth, it does appear most mandates now are kind of popping up in a local jurisdiction versus statewide. But there are still responsible things we should be considering is, still the self-declarations as people come in and out of work, whether or not we should be requiring, and we should be following the CDC or other local guidelines as it relates to wearing masks, whether it's during suspected exposures or if you are exposed and so on. So we're going to drive people back to your local and CDC guidelines. Just stay on top of those, follow those recommendations. We are going to see hot spots, as we used to refer to them, pop up. There's no doubt it's on an increase in the metro area where you and I live here in St. Louis. But, we have to stay on top of those. And it is still a good idea to get the declarations done, particularly when you have hot spots occurring.
Yeah. So as far as that goes, what I'm seeing most employers doing when you're talking about declarations, I think most employers have gone away from the written declaration and just having a reminder out there that employees and visitors to the site shouldn't enter if they are experiencing symptoms of COVID or if they've had a recent positive COVID test, that they just shouldn't be coming into the facility, that sort of by entering the facility, they're declaring that they're COVID free. And I think that the written declarations, the temperature checking, most, if not all of that, has disappeared in most settings.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we don't do that at this time in our office here. But let's talk about why this is still important, because maybe our friends over at OSHA have a little burr in their saddle. Let's call it that. What are they doing in the healthcare space as it relates to inspections, Bert?
Yeah, and I think the burr you're referring to, let's just put it back in context, is at the end of 2021 and then into early 2022, OSHA had issued their temporary emergency standard for all employers regarding masking in the workplace and other COVID precautions relating to vaccination. And the Supreme Court smacked down that OSHA temporary emergency standard. So even without that COVID-19 healthcare standard to enforce, OSHA has now inspected more hospitals and nursing homes in the first 6 months of 2022 than it did for all of 2021. In fact, OSHA has inspected 577 general and psychiatric hospitals through June 3rd, compared with 332 for the entirety of last year. OSHA in 2022 has inspected 729 nursing home and assisted living facilities, up from 442 last year. Interestingly, OSHA inspections among other industries where COVID-19 infections were a significant concern remain about the same as 2021. So among food processors, OSHA has opened 366 inspections in 2022, putting the OSHA really on pace to match its 2021 total of 754 inspections. OSHA has also inspected 500 retail sites in 2022, compared to 1,043 for all of 2021. And these inspections are again related to OSHA. I'm sorry, not related to OSHA, related to COVID-19 and masking and those types of things. So it's unclear, of course, how many of these federal OSHA inspections are going to result in findings of violations. Just a reminder to everyone, OSHA has up to 6 months to issue a citation from when a violation occurred. So citations from this initiative may continue to be issued into early November. So just a reminder, OSHA, and I will say, OSHA really has been aggressive this year, more so than almost any other agency, on going into employer facilities and conducting inspections. I am seeing my clients across the board dealing with more OSHA issues than they ever have in past years, not related to COVID-19, just regular OSHA inspections.
Yeah, it's almost like they're on the march, and that may not be a good thing to say as we're going through all the the U.S. Capitol court rulings and so forth right now. But anyway, our members as well, they're definitely experiencing an increase in OSHA activity. I know our OSHA training programs have been filling up quite a bit. Also, it's definitely a focal point across industries today, but that healthcare space, it's really hot. Bert, the other thing is I have a question here from Matthew, and I think the answer for Matthew is no, we can't do it, but he's really asking about fuel costs. Is there any way to give like gas money, gift cards, that kind of stuff without taxing for those people who come into the office and so on? And everything I'm aware of is if it's not a work related reimbursement, it's going to be considered income to the employee, and you're going to have to tax them appropriately unless it's a diminished amount. But I don't think you can do that, Matthew, and start handing out fuel cards to people coming into the office without taxing them.
Yeah, so I will say right off the bat, Phil, I am by no means a tax attorney, but I think what you're saying sounds correct to me, that it is a form of compensation to the employee. It's no different than paying out additional money to the employee so that they can afford gas. And so whether you give it in the form of cash or whether you give it in the form of a gift card, it still represents some sort of compensation to the employee.
Yeah, it's very similar. And, I worked in industries where we have had fuel tanks on property, and we would let employees fill up their fuel tank because we would be able to purchase that cheaper than they could purchase it at the local gas station. And even in those scenarios, when it was going in their private car for private mileage, it was a taxable income. And same as if you have a company vehicle that you use for personal, and you're supposed to consider that a form of comp. So Matthew, I'm not aware of it, but I do know employers are trying to accommodate that for those employees that are coming to work in multiple ways. One way is fuel cards or gift cards or additional wage increase related to inflation that, they anticipate someday they'll back out. I don't particularly like that latter scenario as much as I do the random gift card or something that is more tangible versus a general wage increase that someday you think you're going to back out. That becomes then a takeaway, and that can create more problems for you as well. Nick, do we have anything real quick on that chart before we go? From today's survey results.
Yes, we do. Survey says this large portion right here is, I'm aware the COVID numbers are rising, but I don't believe we will need to reinstate any of those things that nobody wants to. So, there's the smallest portion there is that they didn't know. So I think everybody's getting their news, has their news sources, has their RSS feeds. They're getting fed the information they need. But nobody wants it.
That's the general position. We're probably aware of not planning to do anything at this time. All right, Nick. So I understand you're going to get Elon Musk on here to help us understand the intent of his email for next week. So please join us then. We'll see you then at 7:30 Central Standard Time. Bye-bye.
My people are working with his people currently. Yeah.
Tell your story, promote your products, communicate with your employees and customers vividly, dynamically, and powerfully. Whether it's a company video, recruitment video, online training, or live meeting, Feature Group can help you, from scripting to highly polished finished production. Whether it's live or on demand, we have the skills and equipment to wow your audience and drive your message home. Feature Group USA, the one-stop shop for all your broadcasting needs.